Good afternoon, everybody. We've made it to an important video, a must share. UNDRIP, we're going to go through all of that in its entirety today. First time ever presented publicly as it really is. Before I get into that, I'm going to let everybody log on because this is an important video. I'm sitting here. It's a beautiful day in Ontario outside of Toronto. Just wonderful weather. It's too bad we're in major lockdown. I know the effects of that are really disparaging for the community. Anyway, I can see people aren't too happy with it, just in the locals that I've seen and talked to when I could. But I see people are starting to come on. So we have everybody online here. UNDRIP, once more again, UNDRIP as it really is. A UN goal Canada's trying to put through now, a non-binding agreement. Now, we're going to talk about all of it in its entirety. Who signed, who didn't, why. A breakdown, absolutely. Never, ever publicly shared or presented out to anybody, let alone Canadians, and of Canada, the First Nation peoples. So we're going to get into that. I want to start off, though, before we get into that specifically, a few facts of this world that everybody needs to know, regardless of what continent. This video could really go out throughout the world. Regardless of whatever continent you reside in or where you're from. When we get into the history of imperialism, specifically a period of colonialism, a very harsh dynamic of the world in very recent time, in the last 300 years of colonialism, absolutely lawfully removed from the world as a whole in 1946. Cemented, most of it cemented by 1948 and again in 52. Done officially in international law, 1960 Convention of Decolonization. Binding law. Nobody voted no. None of the five voted against it. There was abstainers, but not no votes. Why I get into that and everything else is because UNDRIP is a non-binding agreement because we don't have consensus of the ruling governments in this world, the five allies. I took the time, I wrote a paper to Oxford on international law as it really is. I've taken every single UN convention, every single one ever done in the history of the UN from 1946 all the way to now, and I incorporated all changes made by every nation, including those who changed or transformed into UNSC Binding 5 in their relative years to complete major calculations, statistics through economics applied to law, international law. First time ever. We'll see how the paper goes. But I have to get into this today because in Toronto, I was thrown out of a city talk on some of it independence, some of it on Toronto, and many other cities called the C40 want to get into. And they have goals that they want to do outside of their nation states, along with other nation states that don't necessarily recognize regional powers, i.e. Canada, provinces. Why this is important? Because when we look at how all these continents were developed, and especially in the era of colonialism, all coastal territories of every major continent that was put through intense colonization were absolutely all indigenous, thrown off the coast. Majority became the colonizers. Everybody pushed into the center of their continents. A very major important fact. Of all the cities in this world, 80% of the major cities are absolutely coastal or island. No accident. When we get into countries under this UNDRIP, as I go through it, we're going to look at who said what and why. And I'm going to do that right now. So the first thing is abstention. Whenever a convention is put to the UN for all countries, there's those who abstain. If one of 5 UN allied countries, the UNSC permanent members, United Nations Security Council members, abstain, it's not a no vote. It allows the General Assembly to do a majority. However, that's abstention. If one of those 5 goes into no vote, you get into it's not world binding law, and it can never be unless the UNSC, all 5, ratify it. Then it is absolutely international law. UNDRIP, USA, absolute no vote, not looking like they're ever going to change their position. We will get into that, but we're going to start with the countries that all abstained. I'm going to read them off to you. I have notes here, and you'll see why I had to do it. Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Burundi, Colombia, Georgia, Kenya, Nigeria, Russia Federation, one of the UNSC, Samoa and Colombia did now ratify this non-binding agreement. But hear me out. Now we're going to get into countries who said we will remain absent from the vote. Hear this. Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Fiji, Gambia, Grenada, Guinea-Bissau, Israel, Kiribati, Kyrgyzstan, oh boy, Marshall Islands, Mauritania, Montenegro, Morocco, Nauru, Palau, New Guinea, Romania, Rwanda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Sao Tome, Principe, Seychelles, Solomon Islands, Somalia, Tajikistan, Togo, Tonga, Turkmenistan, Tuvalu, Uganda, Uzbekistan, Vanuatu. And I didn't even pronounce all of those correct. Those countries that didn't even bother to show up to vote are because they are all countries in interiors of continents or islands absolutely colonized but remain with significant populations of indigenous peoples, almost all victims of absolute colonialism by Britain, France, Italy. The list goes on. There's seven colonizers. Most of these faced the slave trade, all of it. Painful subjects people don't wish to address. I can guarantee you sustainable goals and development will not address this. Significant revelations of that vote at the time. These countries all share something in common. World War II and what happened post-World War II. Under the leadership of the United States of America and the Russian Federation, which was former Soviet Union, they began decolonizing and allowing these nations to go through independence. Some got constitutions imposed, some did not. But the power of the indigenous majority populations was seen. A lot of these countries went through independence and still to this day fight some of those colonial leftovers inside their government. They didn't sign UNDRIP, and they never will, because UNDRIP isn't legally binding and it doesn't give them any guarantee, none whatsoever, that they will ever achieve full independence and absolute sovereignty. An important note here as we go into the next part is USA. USA never participated in any serious major role as a colonizer. They are a part of North America, an absolute victim of colonization. That country went independent, the only one of its kind in the entire world that broke the colonial system, created a nation absolutely cemented with problems too, like every other country in this world. But the difference is USA votes no on UNDRIP because they absolutely settled the indigenous claims in a country where the indigenous population was made to be a minority. You can go through South America, the countries attached to that, you'll find that the indigenous population's largely wiped out when it's attached to Spain, Portugal. The no voters, USA. I have to flip my notes. Although I know it, it's New Zealand, Canada. New Zealand, Canada, and Australia and USA all voted no to UNDRIP. Absolutely. And there is a reason for that. They are still embedded colonial powers. The indigenous populations of all three countries outside of the USA are not settled, have outstanding human rights violations, and are still colonial empowered constitutionally. They have to vote no because the government, to actually see that law ratified in international law, would be settling all the human rights claims, meaning Canada would be settled. They will never sign as long as they have USA signing no, because USA, unlike the other three, settled their claims, gave self-government and absolute self-determination. Canada has yet to do this. Australia's not been able to finish this, and neither has New Zealand. Look at the history. That's reality. Sustainable cities, the C40 that champion this, are all coastal cities that have gotten some colonial cities land locked really in provinces and territories of countries that are unsettled. They're in the C40 because they don't have access to their regions, their lands, in law or constitutionally of those countries. Claims must be settled. Human rights must be addressed. Self-government, self-determination, all of it. These countries have not really gained independence, not like the others who were absent or those who had abstained. It's very much different. And you can also see the overlap of who voted yes, guaranteed, had absolute history with Russia and USA. Those who vote no are locked in or were problematic countries of absolute colonial countries. UK, France, the Holland, the Dutch, Portuguese, Italy, Spain. That's the reality. That's reality for the world we live in, and why some countries go a certain way and others don't, and the legality behind it. UNDRIP that Canada wants to sign now only because it's non-binding by the USA is to keep Canada sequestered, keep those borders on the round Canada, all coastal cities safe and sound, as they largely sit on unceded land in Canada. Everywhere in the interior is overlapped by absolute treaties requiring settlement. Those cities, those coasts that go with this UN agenda don't even want to address, they don't really own any of the land they occupy in any real capacity, unsettled, unceded. And the UN pushes forward through those colonial countries who did ratify the non-binding agreement. You'll never see USA do it. You'll never see Russia ever do it. Russia remains back. They hold with their veto to come forward any time they wish. By abstaining, they can come forward at any time they don't like the narrative. the world's presenting and say, I'm pulling out the veto. Sorry, you can't do that. And that's their choice. But USA chooses to stand strong, the only country in the world. And it is going to be impossible for a Democrat or Republican, whatever government elected, to ever sign on to it because of America First and the Constitution of the United States of America. People can run down the American history, but it is the only country in its design that absolutely protects the people of America, and for that matter, many, many democracies around the world. A lot of countries could learn a lot from the USA. The work Richard Nixon did in 1971 is 10 times what UNDRIP ever will promise. That's where Canada has to go. That's where First Nations have to go. Canadian citizens have to go. It takes a party to get elected into power to do that. I hope everybody shares this video. It's a lot of information, but it's important information. If you don't get it out, nothing will ever change, and this country will continue to go down as the powerful politicians get more powerful and the foreign influences grow until they steal everything from the Indigenous, and the Canadian citizens will be left holding the bill. Disgusting. Learn, read. There's more coming as I finish the Toronto presentations. I got weeks of data to go through. I love all of you loyalist followers who took the time to go through that painful experience. I know a lot of it, as I warned you, was. I do it because it has to be done. I appreciate everything. Thank you all. You know who you are. Mark, you want to be public? That's great. I love you, brother. You're a terrific part of the CCP, Canadian Constitutionalist Party. And Canadians, have no fear. First Nations, we will get this out. It will be seen by the CCP, regardless of lockdowns or how much they slow me down. This party will be registered. The narrative that will go across Canada by world experts will happen. There's nothing the world can do. It's too late. The truth is coming. Bye now. Share. Get it out there.